Get out of here immediately, my mother demanded, dumping 3 heavy moving boxes onto my expensive living room rug. We are giving this house to your sister because she needs it for her wedding. She stood there with her arms crossed, looking absolutely triumphant, truly believing she could just snap her fingers and strip away the home I had paid for with my own sweat and blood. She thought she was the queen of our family empire, dictating who deserved what. Little did she know, she was walking blindly into a trap of her own making, and she was about to learn a staggering lesson. Thank you for watching this video. Before I take you back there, do me one small favor. Take a second to like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. It helps more than you know. My name is Marin, and I am 33 years old. For my entire life, I have been the unofficial automated teller machine for my family. I work as a senior data analyst at a major logistics corporation here in Denver, Colorado. My days are spent looking at numbers, analyzing patterns, maintaining meticulous spreadsheets, and predicting outcomes. I am entirely logical. My family, however, operates on a completely different metric. Let me take you back 7 years, to the exact moment the seeds of this absolute betrayal were planted. I was 26 years old, working 80 hours a week, eating cheap microwave dinners, and saving every single penny I earned. I had finally found the perfect house. It was a beautiful, sprawling property in a quiet neighborhood, listed at $600,000. I had managed to save $200,000 on my own, but I needed an extra $50,000 to secure the best possible interest rate and avoid paying extra insurance fees. My father, Warren, a retired chiropractor who still arrogantly demanded everyone call him doctor, offered to give me the money. He and my mother, Beryl, cornered me at a Sunday family dinner. "It is a gift for our responsible daughter," my mother said, smiling that fake, sugary smile of hers. Family assets belong to the family. That was their favorite phrase. Family assets belong to the family. They used it whenever they wanted to blur the lines of ownership and take credit for my hard work. I knew them too well. I knew that accepting money from them was exactly like swallowing poison disguised as honey. They did not give gifts. They purchased leverage. So, being the data analyst that I am, I insisted on drafting a strict loan agreement. I demanded that this be treated as a formal financial transaction, complete with a fixed interest rate and a strict monthly repayment schedule. They laughed at me. They called me paranoid and dramatic, but they signed the paper anyway, completely convinced I would never actually hold them or myself to it. I paid them back every single month. I never missed a single payment. I documented every bank transfer, kept every printed statement, and filed away every canceled check. I paid back the principal $50,000 plus $12,000 in interest over exactly 5 years. When the final payment cleared, my father signed a written receipt acknowledging the debt was completely settled. I locked that paper in my fireproof safe. I built my fortress of evidence. Meanwhile, my younger sister, Fallon, was living a life of sheer luxury, fully funded by my parents. Fallon is 27 years old, and she is the absolute golden child of our family. She has never held a real job for more than 6 months. She spent 3 years trying to run an artisanal candle-making business that lost tens of thousands of dollars. Who paid for her failed business? My parents. Who paid the rent for her upscale apartment downtown? My parents. Who paid for her luxury vacations across the globe so she could find herself? My parents. They treated her like absolute royalty, shielding her from every consequence, while they treated me like a corporate employee whose only purpose was to generate revenue for their empire. Sometimes, the people who share your blood are the ones most eager to bleed you dry. Fast forward to a few weeks ago. Fallon had just gotten engaged to Pierce, a 28-year-old assistant manager at a cell phone accessory kiosk at the local mall. They had been dating for only 6 months. Suddenly, Fallon needed a grand, expensive wedding, and more importantly, she needed a grand house to live in. My parents' bank accounts were finally running dry after years of relentlessly funding Fallon's extravagant lifestyle. They needed a desperate solution. They needed a house that was fully furnished, beautifully maintained, and entirely free. They looked at my $600,000 home, and their greedy minds hatched a completely delusional plan. They thought they could just take it. They thought the $50,000 they lent me 7 years ago gave them permanent, unquestionable ownership over my life. They did not realize I had been preparing for this exact war. Which brings us back to that Saturday afternoon in my living room. I was sitting at my dining table, reviewing some financial documents, when my mother used her emergency spare key to barge right in. She dumped the heavy moving boxes on the floor. "Get out. We are giving this house to your sister," she demanded. My father strolled in right behind her, his chest puffed out with arrogant pride. "Do not be dramatic, Marin," my father sneered. "Family assets belong to the family. We helped you buy this place, so we decide who lives here." I remained perfectly still. I felt an icy calm wash over my entire body. My blood ran cold, not out of fear, but out of profound clarity. The predator had finally stepped right into the snare. They were so blinded by their own immense arrogance that they completely failed to notice the man sitting quietly at the far end of my long dining table. Mr. Calder cleared his throat. My parents jumped. The smug masks on their faces slipped for just a second. "Excuse me," Mr. Calder said, standing up and straightening his tie. "I am the branch manager from First National Bank." He looked at my father with utter professional detachment. "We were just in the middle of finalizing the official paperwork to refinance this estate. Actually, sir, the property deed shows that Marin is the sole legal owner. According to federal and state property records, no other parties possess any legal claim to this residence." The silence in the room was staggering. My father's face completely drained of color. His jaw dropped open. My mother looked like she had just been slapped across the face. "That is impossible," my mother snapped, her voice trembling as her illusion crumbled. "We gave her $50,000 for the down payment. We own equity in this property." I slowly closed my laptop. "You gave me a loan," I said. "And I paid it back." I stood up and walked over to my metal filing cabinet. I pulled out a thick, meticulously organized binder. I walked back and dropped it onto the glass dining table. The heavy thud made my mother flinch backward. $50,000 in principal, I stated, my voice completely devoid of emotion. $12,000 in interest. Paid in full. Here are the certified bank statements. Here are the canceled checks. And here is the notarized receipt bearing your exact signature, Warren. My father stared blindly at the documents. His entire illusion of power shattered into a million unfixable pieces. "You cannot do this to your sister," my mother cried out, shifting instantly from a commanding dictator to a desperate, weeping victim. "Fallon needs a place to live. She has already booked the country club for the wedding reception. She is counting on living here rent-free." "That is not my problem," I replied. Right on cue, the heavy oak front door swung open again. Fallon and her fiancé, Pierce, waltzed into my house carrying expensive tile samples and paint swatches. They were completely oblivious to the utter devastation happening in the dining room. "Mom, I was thinking we should completely gut this kitchen," Fallon whined, dropping her expensive leather purse on my granite kitchen counter. "The cabinets are just so terribly dated." She finally looked up and saw my face. "What is going on?" Fallon asked, her voice dropping. "Tell her," my father demanded, pointing a shaking, furious finger at me. "Tell your sister she can have the house." I looked at Fallon. I looked at Pierce. "No," I said. Fallon's face completely crumpled. The spoiled princess was finally, for the very first time in her life, being told no. "But Mom promised." Fallon shrieked, stomping her foot on the floor like a toddler. "Pierce and I cannot afford a mortgage and a luxury wedding. You are so terribly selfish, Marin. You have an amazing job and a huge house. I need this more than you do." I turned my icy gaze toward Pierce, who was actively shrinking back toward the hallway doorway. "How exactly are you going to pay a $3,200 monthly mortgage, plus property taxes and homeowner insurance, on a cell phone kiosk salary, Pierce?" I asked. Pierce swallowed hard, looking terrified. Your parents said the estate was completely paid off by a family trust. I laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound that echoed in the quiet room. My parents had completely fabricated a financial fantasy to appease their golden child, assuming they could just bully me into legally transferring a $600,000 asset to cover up their profound lies. There is no family trust, I said. There is only my mortgage, which is entirely in my name. Now, both of you, pick up your boxes and leave. My father stepped forward, his face turning dark red with sheer, unfiltered rage. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his shiny brass spare key, dangling it in the air like a weapon of authority. We are your parents, he growled, trying to salvage his broken pride. We have access to this property whenever we want. I did not blink. I stepped forward, reached out, and snatched the key right out of his sweaty hand. Not anymore, I said. A locksmith is arriving in exactly 30 minutes to change every single deadbolt on this property. If you do not give your sister this house right now, consider yourself disowned, my mother screamed, tears of furious defeat streaming down her face. You will not be invited to the wedding. You will have no family left. I looked at the woman who had spent my entire life treating me like a disposable bank account. I walked over to the front door and pulled it wide open. Then consider me disowned, I said. Get out of my house. They stumbled out onto the sidewalk, completely shattered. Their grand empire of manipulation had crumbled into dust right before their eyes. But true predators never stop hunting until they are forced into a cage. 3 weeks later, I received an urgent telephone call from the fraud department at my mortgage lending institution. An unauthorized individual, using my outdated Social Security information, had attempted to order a fraudulent deed transfer. My father had actually tried to forge official legal documents to transfer the title of my estate directly into Fallon's name. He crossed the line from toxic parenting directly into felony estate fraud. I immediately contacted my retaining attorney. I instructed her to draft a formal cease and desist mandate, threatening immediate criminal prosecution and a police warrant if they ever attempted to access my financial records or step foot on my property again. The legal courier served the documents directly to their front door. The threat of a federal indictment finally terrified my arrogant father into absolute, permanent silence. The harassment completely stopped. A few months later, I ran into my Aunt Linnea, my mother's older sister, at a coffee shop downtown. She hugged me tightly. You protected your hard work, Marin, Aunt Linnea told me, sipping her coffee. Never apologize for that. She told me the spectacular aftermath of their completely failed scheme. Without my house to live in, and without my money to steal, the reality of my parents' profound financial ruin finally hit them. Fallon's lavish country club wedding had to be completely canceled. She and Pierce ended up getting married in a tiny, cheap ceremony in a public park. They were forced to rent a cramped, 2-bedroom apartment on the bad side of town. For the first time in her entirely pampered life, Fallon had to actually go out and find a minimum wage job just to keep her electricity from being shut off. My parents had to sell their luxury sport utility vehicle just to cover their own staggering credit card debts. They tried to destroy me, but they ended up utterly destroying themselves. 6 months later, I am sitting in the sunroom of my beautiful, peaceful home. I successfully refinanced my mortgage, lowering my monthly payments significantly. I am currently planning a 3-week luxury vacation across Europe. I have a thriving career, a beautiful estate, and absolute peace of mind. Meanwhile, they are drowning in debt and bitter resentment, completely trapped in the miserable reality they built for themselves. I realized something profound. I lost my family, but I gained my freedom. I have my dignity, my property, and my future, and no amount of their fake family loyalty could ever buy that. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with your family over money or property? I would love to read your experiences in the comments below. Do not forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more stories like this. See you in the next video.